Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast, brought to you by Energy Dialogues.
Hello, a very warm welcome to Energy Perspectives podcast, sponsored by the Energy Dialogues. I have the distinct pleasure of being here with Kevin Skillern, who is a managing partner with Energy Innovation Capital. Kevin, why don't you sort of tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll sort of dive into some of the questions that I have for you today.
Yeah, happy to. I am a long time in the energy business. So my entire career has been in the energy business. I've been now about 30 years. So it's kind of 9 years in strategy consulting with Booz Allen, 9 years with GE in the energy investment arm of GE Capital, which was a very active time. And then I left GE in 2013 to launch what's become Energy Innovation Capital. And I think the way to think about it is that I ran the program at GE for many years, so from 2005 to 2013, that invested in technology companies in the energy business. That was the biggest corporate program in the world, and at this point, we're a very active investor with Energy Innovation Capital in technologies in the energy business. So at this point, I've probably been involved personally in almost 100 technology companies in the energy sector. And I think I just see this as a very bright moment. It's kind of like I say, we're in a golden age of innovation in the energy business. It's a really exciting time.
I love that golden age of innovation. Can you just sort of share with us what kind of excites you is that when you talk about this golden age, like what different technologies are you seeing really having kind of an impact in the enery space that you're looking at?
I would start maybe and take one level up from that, right? Which is that, why is there a golden age? It's because, I always like to say what we do, and we have the distinct pleasure, we work with, 6 of the largest U.S. energy companies as partners in what we do. We have about 40 C-level executives out of the energy industry that are investors and work collaboratively with us as well. And so what's going on here is that you have kind of this energy is the foundation of modern prosperity. Like, we take it for granted, but it is absolutely the cornerstone of modern prosperity. And when you look at kind of the growth and the importance of it, like, energy is, and the demand for energy has just been growing relentlessly all around the world, right? And that's even when you look at in the developed world where we think our energy consumption's been kind of flat in many ways. That's not true. What really has happened is that we've kind of gone to importing more things from other regions like China and India, where the energy, so net energy is 100% correlated with prosperity for the world and activity. And what there is this, I would say, very strong, this decarbonization thing. There really is a massive moral imperative around decarbonizing the world's energy system. But what makes it so interesting in what we do, being around these young companies that are bringing kind of these great technologies into the world, and it takes a decade or 2 decades to really scale this up from the ground floor, is that you have competing moral imperatives, right? So you have this need to kind of decarbonize, but you also have the need to do that in a way that's cost effective, in a way that, we saw kind of the disruption in Europe with this energy security thing, right? And so I think from a practical bit, you've got massive growth, you've got this, really a generational thing. We're at the ground floor of what really is a generational change as we're looking at kind of the growth and the decarbonization of the energy systems, right? And that really is a technology problem at the core. There is absolutely, because of this competing moral imperative, right? And I use statistics. I'm very numbers oriented, right? And so if you look at, and I think people don't necessarily appreciate it, and we talk about energy poverty, and people think that's like the developing world, right? So in the United States, the top 20% of the households, they only spend about 4% of their disposable income on energy. If you're in the bottom 20%, even in this country, that number is 20 to 25%, okay? If you look we had the energy crisis in Europe when Russia invaded Ukraine. And, there was a piece in The Economist, and it said, more people died in the winter for that year from not heating their homes enough compared to COVID, right? More than COVID in the winter after that, right? And so it's not really just, we have this energy, so that the competing moral imperatives are the need to decarbonize, the need to not have energy poverty, again, not just in the developing world, but even in the highly developed world, right? And then to also have this energy security issue where, again, back to the trade-offs that are involved in all those things. So it's a kind of a fascinating, complex problem, but technology and kind of the innovation layer is about as important as it gets. in that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your emphasis on one, energy and prosperity, and also sort of thinking about equity and the fact that energy poverty is something that is not just a problem in the developing world, but also something that we see here. When you think about sort of investment, there's, conversations sometimes go that we're transitioning away from fossil energies. However, I think the sort of the more accurate picture is that it's much more of an all of the above, that we're adding a lot of new energy. And at the same time, the idea that we also need to decarbonize. So again, sort of thinking about how you think about investment in the energy space, both the traditional and sort of what is considered to be sort of the clean, sort of more decarbonized sources of energy. Yeah. What does that look like to you? As an investor.
And maybe I could take another kind of step back, right? So, what's really gone on, like the big changes, right? Again, back to technology, right? The big changes have been the dramatic reduction in the cost of solar, and then the dramatic reduction, we're talking, 90+% reduction in the cost of batteries. And the batteries are then what enables the transportation fleet to go electric, okay? But even, and I use this example commonly, that this is and I go back to it's a generational, what makes this so exciting, right? It's a generational problem because it really touches so many things, okay? And so and I use the example in like electric vehicles, there's 1.3 billion passenger vehicles in the world, right? And that is only about 7% of the world's emissions comes from passenger vehicles, okay? So actually, more energy is consumed by electric motors than is by all the passenger cars in the world, okay? So if you were to kind of tomorrow make that whole fleet of the world electric, you wouldn't take the emissions of that from 7% down to 0. You would bring them down because there's an energy content of the electricity and things, right? You might cut that in half, okay? So there are other really big opportunities as you're looking at this that are very cost effective. So for example, I think we were the first institutional investor in America to invest around the large scale, wide area detection of methane leaks. And so reducing the leaks of methane and so the estimates are, there's kind of McKinsey and BCG and other folks, right? That, you can literally reduce the emissions of the world by, 4 or 5% just by kind of operating and addressing these kind of things that are happening in the industry, right? And it's not that the industry is bad at all. They just never had to worry about this problem. And so I think as soon as there's kind of the focus and the right economic aspects of it, they will get after it. Now, again, that's not just a U.S. issue. It's kind of global. But that's the kind of thing where there are really a lot of cost-effective solutions. And there is no free lunch, right? To kind of go to a lower carbon world, it does cost money. There's no way around that. But that said, and so you will end up with the addition because of the demand growth, where the role of kind of natural gas, for example, is many, many decades. I think that, there's zero prospect of kind of, meaningful demand declines in the world for the traditional hydrocarbon complex.
Excellent, thank you.
Energy Dialogues invites you to join industry leaders, investors, policymakers, regulators, and innovators on December 1st through 3rd for the North American Gas Forum. The forum, taking place in Washington, D.C., will provide attendees with a unique opportunity to participate in crucial discussions on the future of natural gas, LNG, and the broader energy landscape. For more information or to register, please visit energy-dialogues.com/NAGF. Again, that's energy-dialogues.com/NAGF. See you there.
So I want to take you, so you mentioned methane leaks. I was just recently in a really interesting conversation on the role of AI and methane emissions. Can you tell us, in terms of when you think about the technologies that you're investing in terms of looking at how to reduce methane emissions?
Yeah, I'll try to explain that. So what you will see, right, and again, from the bulk of the methane leaks really come from a few things, right? It comes from operations in the field. So in the U.S., for example, we have almost 2 million oil and gas wells, okay? And that's true, like if you looked at Russia and places like this, you've got lots and lots of wells that then have maybe been around for a long time as well. They might have been around for 60, 100 years in some cases, right? And so when, you've got the pipes that connect it. So the leaks are not at the big pipeline level. The leaks are really more associated out in the field. And so if you took like the Permian Basin, where the Permian Basin basically covers 50,000 square miles in Texas and 10,000 square miles in New Mexico. And so what you will see is, think of it as like it's a big field. There's lots of wells out there. They're in dirt roads. They're not easily to access. And so it's like an old house. And so things are kind of breaking down in the old house that then require to kind of periodically check and go fix it, just like you would have to go fix things that break down in an old house. And so that's where I think from a systems layer, what you will see, and kind of our view for many years has been that you're going to see a layered set of systems. So you've got satellites, okay? So and we are, one of our really interesting technology companies, a company called Orbital Sidekick out in San Francisco, has the world's first commercially available hyperspectral imaging satellite constellation, okay? And it's phenomenally interesting, but think of it as like a satellite system. You will be seeing leaks that basically are of the scale of about 100 kilograms an hour of methane leaking, okay? So when you get to the next layer down, right, you will see plane-based solutions. So we were the early institutional investor in a company that's called Inside M, that was previously called Kairos Aerospace, okay? And so they are really one of the leaders in this, flying over large areas. So take that 50,000 square miles of Texas and the Permian Basin, 10,000 square miles in New Mexico, where you're almost like flying a lawnmower across to understand kind of where those things are and identify, the hundreds of places where there might be problems. And you will see at the aerial level, you'll see leaks that might be, just to keep it simple, 10, 20, 30 kilograms an hour, okay? And then you get to smaller things, that's not where the bulk of the problem is, because they don't add up to much. It's more the larger scale ones where the really important problems to address are. So you will see sometimes then handheld or kind of fixed solutions where, like on a new site, people would actually put equipment to actually sense and measure things on the site. But that doesn't make sense when you've got 2 million existing wells in the United States alone, right? So you've got this, then it will be a layered set of solutions that then kind of identify where those leaks are and allow people to respond to them more quickly.
Fantastic. What are some things that institutional investors are sort of thinking about now, and what are they excited about when they sort of look at the next sort of 5 years and this, as you pointed out, this kind of golden age, innovation, what's happening across, the energy space? Yeah. So you say you work with 6 of the, major energy companies here in the United States. I think our audience would really love to kind of get a picture in terms of what are some of the...
Yeah, and what's so interesting here, right, is that there isn't kind of one thing. It's so rich in opportunity, right? And so at the core, when you think about getting involved in a young company and it kind of scales up to be big, I think in my career, I've been involved in 8 unicorn type companies, right, from that. And
your favorite? Did you have one?
No, there's no single favorite, never that way. But so the issue though is what you always look at is there's kind of 3 critical pieces, okay, in this business. Energy is different, and so the first thing you got to have is actually a technology that works, okay, meaning that there's a lot of things that it may work in a certain condition, but it doesn't work necessarily in broad-based conditions, okay. So that it works at that site, but it doesn't work at 100 sites, okay. So you need to have a technology that actually works in kind of a larger mass market kind of setting. The second thing you're always looking for is that there's actually a pretty big market for these things, that there's something of scale that's worth going after, right? And then you've got kind of that from these technology companies that they've got a really defensible kind of advantage, right? And then, because that translates to margins, that you can actually generate a company that's valuable, okay? And then the last piece is always around the people. And sometimes the people that invent the technology, develop technology, are not the ones that are able to really scale it commercially. Okay? They're very different skill sets. And so what's phenomenally interesting right now is that you have basically all these kind of areas. So if you take like just one interesting theme is around like this reset between the US and China. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a massive reset going on, right? And the example I like to use is in the GE time. I think in the time I ran the program there, we backed 52 companies. And I want to say about half of them had meaningful activities in China, markets, supply chains, other things, right? We have, I think, 33 companies in our portfolio right now, and there's zero with meaningful activity in China, okay? So this US-China reset is a big deal. And so here's an example. So here, and we're talking about, the target-rich environment. So one of our really interesting technology companies up in Boston is the largest processor of rare earth metals outside of China. Okay, still young, still early, because we are resetting these supply chains at scale. Okay, so back to this, you've got technology, you've got the economics. Obviously, you got to bring the capital to scale that up. Okay, so that's just this whole theme around critical minerals as its own big theme.
After China's most recent announcement, right, of
exactly,
banning gas, so
exactly.
it's
So we have
meaningful.
massive exposure just because we need the magnets that go into the electric motors, that go into military equipment, and other things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just one theme. Okay, then you look at another theme around just like batteries. Okay, and so one of the revolutionary changes that's affected the world is around the decline of the battery costs, right? So we've got investments in companies like one in Boston called Titan, another one in Australia called Reelectrify, that are really enabling another major step change in the cost profile of these battery systems. I mean, we're talking about 20 or 30% reductions in the cost profiles. Okay, so that theme around kind of batteries and kind of that going into the vehicles, into the power grids, that's a mega theme in and of itself. Okay, then you get to the themes around like, okay, now data centers and things that make data centers.
Question.
And then you get to the themes around advanced analytics and AI. Okay, then you get to the themes around what about natural gas and the ability. So we've got about a dozen investments that directly touch the natural gas industry, right? And so because natural gas is itself a growth engine, as we kind of displace coal in the developed world, and has as kind of a much cleaner option. And also, when you look at it, gas, it's always been this. If you look at the G7 countries, that effectively, as the share of coal in the power side has gone down, it's been about 1/3 replaced by renewables, solar and wind, and 2/3 replaced by natural gas. Okay, and so when you look at that, so this whole theme around kind of natural gas, so it's a very target-rich. So when you ask what do investors get excited about, you get excited about a range of opportunities. Now, what we do around these young technology companies is hard. But that said, this is a very strong growth industry for the next 10 or 20 years.
And how do you see, so with natural gas and all the projections, again, as you pointed out, are for higher demand across, natural gas, and some of that is, of course, being driven by kind of topic of the day, data centers and AI. Yeah. Where do you see in terms of some of the interesting investment opportunities in the natural gas space?
Yeah, I'll give you some examples, right? So clearly, if you look at some of the things we're involved in, there's this whole issue around the methane intensity of the industry, right? And that's a whole field in and of itself, right? One of the other things is back to these kind of lower carbon fuels, okay? And so one of our other, fascinating investments is in a company up in Edmonton, Alberta, that is actually commercializing technology to microwave natural gas and produce carbon-free hydrogen from natural gas. And that is a much more energy efficient way than trying to break apart water with electrolyzers. Much more energy efficient, right? And so back to this early phases, the ground floor of kind of this golden age of innovation, we will be commissioning kind of the first pilot plant. So it's still at that scale, right, in the coming months, okay? And that is up in Alberta. That's a big deal because effectively that should be the lowest cost way to decarbonize natural gas, okay? And so you might say, well, why do I want to do that, right? And so the issue would be that effectively, like in, take California, I live out in San Francisco. So if California wants to decarbonize the natural gas mix, what you would do is look to blend in probably 5 to 10%. Theoretically, they say you could do 20%. I think the numbers can ultimately be in that 5 to 10% range. That you would look to blend 5 or 10% hydrogen into the gas system, okay? And in doing that, the hydrogen is actually richer, meaning it's if you have it at your home, the burner would be stronger, right? So you have other issues if you put too much in. And so effectively just putting in California alone, that if they want kind of a lower carbon standard, lower carbon natural gas, so there's less emissions going in the atmosphere from the energy, you would need many, many billions of dollars of capital just to produce the hydrogen in that state alone, right? This is a ground floor of a really big opportunity.
Fantastic. So we're almost out of time. So final question is sort of what is it that sort of excites you most right now? And maybe what question do you think, our audience would really like to have an answer. What's something that you'd like to share before we close off today's conversation?
People always ask, hey, what's your, I get a lot of questions about what's your favorite one, right?
You.
I know, and I always like to say, it's like, because we've got a lot of good things, right? And so there really are, so I think some of the other things I'm excited about. So I'm excited about because we're seeing kind of these companies break out. I mean, you're kind of at this, back to the ground floor and these things that now we've been involved with for years that are now really scaling up commercially. So I'm always excited about that. I'm excited about how we work. So, how we work with our corporate partners. We work, for example, with in the natural gas industry with Williams as one of our partners on the pipeline side. They move 35% of the natural gas in the United States every day. They're, major player in the natural gas industry. And so, we work very collaboratively with them and our other partners to understand these innovation opportunities and where we can fit and bring, these technologies together with them. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about how that model's working. I'm excited about take like this U.S.-China reset, right? We are seeing kind of this much more integrated need around the integration of energy as part of national security, right? And that is a mega theme, and so we are actually working on that issue very actively at the moment, right? So I'm excited about a lot of things, and I think if you put your 10 or 20 year lens, we're at a really dynamic moment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. You've gotten me very excited. Really wonderful to kind of get a tremendous overview of the work that you're doing, but also sort of the larger sort of global landscape. Perfect. And the role of innovations and technologies. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast. We hope you enjoyed this engaging conversation. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss out on an episode of the Energy Perspectives. For more information on Energy Dialogues, please visit energy-dialogues.com. Until next time.